New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello and welcome back to Global Focus. Today, I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sharri Johnson, and our guest today is a humdinger. Since 1986, when Reverend Dr. Tracy was introduced to New Thought by Dr. Donald Curtis, she has used universal spiritual principles to infuse her life with peace and joy. We could stop there, right? Not going to do it. You may be familiar with her as the host of Poetry, Prayer, and Practice right here on New Thought Media Network. In fact, right after this show, where she is also part of the team that produces the Saturday Science of Mind Conversation series. Or maybe you know her, this is where I first came across her, as a former chair of the Leadership Council for Centers for Spiritual Living Worldwide, or as a recipient of both the Ernest Holmes Award and an honorary doctorate degree from CSL. But what you may not know, and I didn't know either of those things, and we're going to be spending some time on them, is that she is the moderator of a Facebook group with more than 7,000 members focused on interrupting and ending racism. And here's the one that blew me away. I just can't imagine it. Anyone who knows Tracy well would tell you she is a serious roller skater. I want to see you on skates. Please help me welcome Reverend Dr. Tracy Brown.
Absolutely. I am a serious roller skater at least twice a week normally when I am at home base. And I travel with my skates when I know there's a place to go. So,
oh cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I've never fallen down on roller skates, but all I have to do is on ice skates, but all I have to do is look at roller skates and I'm on my butt.
Well,
I can't explain it. I just know that's the history of the story.
Well, no, you and I are like fraternal twins then, not identical in that regard, because I tried to ice skate when I was a child because I went to school with a lot of kids who liked to ice skate and I could never do it. I cannot ice skate. The balance points are so completely different that makes sense to me that you can ice skate, but you would not be comfortable on roller skates.
Isn't that funny? I think it's weird too. And I keep trying roller skates because I can ice skate, but I've given up. That's just something for my next incarnation. So I want to hear about your group. What is it called for starters? I'm thinking it's a Facebook group, right? So what's it called?
Yeah. So I started a public Facebook group, and it has kind of a long name. It's the question, what is mine to do to interrupt or end race-based hatred or violence? So we refer to it, and I refer to it as mine to do, hashtag mine to do, like, one word.
Gotcha.
And so if you were to put hashtag mine to do in the search bar in Facebook, then you would, get connected to 7 years of posts and videos and conversations. And what I love a lot about the Mind to Do Facebook group is that something inside me, like the intuitive guidance that I got, was to make it a Facebook group, not a Facebook page. So a page would be more like, this is what Tracy thinks about what we should be doing. And it would be really heavily reliant on me posting advice, information, education, opinions. But because it's a group, everybody who is a member of the group is jointly responsible. We are collectively responsible for educating each other, for sharing posts that we see that either are educational or inspiring. And so, I sometimes, like the month of August in 2023, I was traveling 21 out of 31 days.
Wow.
So I didn't post very much in the group during the month of August, but other people did because they came across an article or they read something that was educational to them, like they had never heard of this historical character and they or person, and they would post it and make a comment about it. So it's a pretty active group.
Well, what I love about the name is mine to do is that's a phrase I use a lot. I mean, that's my daily morning prayer. What is mine to do today? But it's also the answer for people like me who had no idea how all pervasive racism is.
Mm-hmm.
When you first realize, I mean, you're gobsmacked. You have no idea, except something has to be done and you don't know what it is and you don't know how to do it. And you feel very, very small. But when you can say to yourself, what is mine to do? When there's somewhere you can turn to find out what is mine to do, I'm getting God bumps right now, just thinking about how wonderful that is to know that there is something that's mine to do every single day. And for every human being, there is something that is theirs to do, and it's not the same thing. I mean, right. We're all different, and what is ours to do is all different. And sometimes what is ours to do is to shut up and listen.
From a spiritual practice perspective, I too had used that phrase a lot, or asked that question a lot of myself and others. Like, just answer the question, like, what's mine to do about this? Or what's mine to do to deepen my spiritual practice? Or what's mine to do to embody the spiritual principles that I believe? So I had used that phrase a lot, and it organically came up. This Facebook group was created right after the 9 people were murdered in Charleston in the church. So, a few years back. And what happened was there were so many people who were reaching out to me because in my corporate business, I do diversity, inclusion, strategy, and leadership work. And I had been at that time doing work with spiritual communities around the intersection of diversity, inclusion, and spirituality. And so I was getting literally, I think in 24 hours, I must have had 200 to 250 people reach out to me. And they were often saying, well, what do we do about this? Or we have to stop these kinds of things happening. So what can I do? Or what, tell me what to do. So it organically, the Facebook group organically, started out as, well, what's mine to do? What's Sharri's to do? What's David's to do? What's Angela's to do? What's Kwame's to do? What each person can do. And the line that I hear myself say over and over again is, every one of us can do something with the people we come into contact with, wherever we are on the globe or in the world, that makes a positive contribution to interrupting or ending race-based hatred and violence.
Well, I'm on board. I'm so excited to find out about this group. I don't know I don't even know how to say that. I don't know how I lived so long without knowing what I didn't know.
Yeah.
And there's for me, just because of the way I was raised, I guess, there's a lot of shame involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and embarrassment. And I recognize that shame and embarrassment are not the same thing. Shame goes a whole lot deeper. But it's wonderful to me that there are people like you and Lisa Henry here in Kansas City who are actually trying to help those of us who have discovered that we don't know, a whole lot of what we don't know, how to find out what that is and how to discover what is ours to do.
So one of the things I love about you phrasing it that way is, like, how can you know? The easy example that many people resonate with is a fish doesn't know it's swimming in water. And so if you are a person who is raised in the mainstream, and in our part of the world, if you're raised as a person who is white and you are, you can't know all the things that automatically happen unless you happen to live with or have a really close friend or family member who has a different experience. And so in that sense, there is really no place to linger in guilt or shame, because you have the awareness because of someone educating you or being in a certain situation or a big event happening in the world that makes you aware of something. And in that regard, it's just like anything else we do with our spiritual practice. When we know better, we do better, and we are addicted to what we're addicted to, or we live in the way that we live until we learn there's another way to live. And then we build the bridge through our shift in thoughts and feelings, which turn into beliefs, which turn into behaviors, which turn then into habits that contribute to a new or different outcome.
Oh, I love that.
So, yeah,
Building
so
a bridge.
don't get stuck in how did I not ever know? Celebrate, wow, I'm learning this new stuff. And oh, what are 5 ways I can apply that in my life? Like, where, who can I talk to and learn more and get excited about the journey forward and release any emotional attachment to the past, unless it was intentional. And that's a whole nother conversation.
Whole nother thing. Yeah. No, I love that. And it is, I will say that I have in the last 7 or 8 months started to understand that there are things I can be grateful for. In no matter what the situation is, there are things I can be grateful for. When I stick my foot in it, which, is a fairly routine practice, unfortunately, I can be grateful that that's the last time I stuck my foot in that particular place, because I learned something. My father didn't say a whole lot of things that were worth listening to, but one of them that was the only mistake that's stupid is the one you repeat, because that means you didn't learn anything the first time.
Oh, I love that.
So I have said that 8 trillion times because I taught college for 35 years. I said it a lot while I was teaching college. In fact, I said to my students what I should say to myself: celebrate your mistakes, because nobody ever learned anything from their successes. We learn from our mistakes.
Exactly. And Nikki Giovanni has a quote that I'm going to paraphrase, but it's something like, it's not the error that counts, it's what you do, like, afterwards. Like, I want people to tell me if I use the wrong terms. I want people to tell me if I just said something that was offensive or just inappropriate that I wouldn't know. And I think that's something, I want to know so that I can correct that, and so I can share that with others, when I have the opportunity. And so I can't get stuck. When we get stuck in being afraid to say the wrong thing or being embarrassed, like you can be embarrassed, but you can't get stuck there.
Yep.
So we get stuck in being embarrassed or being like, oh, because I messed up, I better just not say anything at all. The thing about that is that we don't grow from that.
That's right.
And it is a blessing when people will actually give you the feedback that allows you to grow or gives you the opportunity to make amends and to do it differently in the future. And so we can't hide from that. Well, people do, but it's not healthy to.
Well, I love what you just said because it reminds me of the very first Ernest Holmes quote I ever heard was, "We must remain open at the top."
Mm.
And the best teacher I ever had was a Catholic nun who looked like a cross between a fire plug and a bulldog. And everybody in the whole school was scared of her, including the principal. She was a biology teacher. And my best friend and I talked her into letting us sophomores take a junior class, which was biology. And there was one day when we were talking about botany, and I had one of those, what's everybody else doing here? She's obviously talking to me moments. Because she said, no tree ever died from old age. Trees only die when some outside force causes them to stop growing. And it was like a thunderbolt hit me. I mean, we're talking something that happened 60 years ago, and I've still got God bumps thinking about it, because at that moment I knew that I was hearing a deep spiritual truth.
Yes.
And that's what you said. If we stop ourselves from growing, we're not helping ourselves, we're not helping the world.
Well, and here are two things about that I remind myself and others of all the time. Number one is that when in this case, because of that website, we're really focused on interrupting or ending race-based hatred and violence. So what happens is many people often just go, oh, we're talking about racism, we're talking about white people mistreating Black people. But the reality is, one, that there is a negative impact on the soul and the wholeness of white people when racism exists. Number two, that racism is not just a white-Black thing where Black people are the victim to racism perpetrated by white people, that racism exists in and has negative impacts on any combination of people from different racial groups coming together or trying to work together, including if, as a person of African descent, as a Black person, I have things I don't know about people who identify as Latino, or there are things that I would not know if I had not done a lot of study about people from different racial groups than my own. And so racism itself is a system. To really call it racism, it's systemic in nature. And in general, the most that we see of racism is racism that favors people who are white. But the impact of that racism affects everyone by creating this hierarchy that limits our exposure to each other and our understanding of each other. So while it may not really fall under technical definitions of racism for me as a Black person to be uncomfortable with someone who is a different racial category, because as a Black person, I may not have the social power built in. But the fact that I don't know the actual history of what happened with American Indians or Native Americans, because it wasn't taught in schools either. If I didn't go do my own research, that's the impact of racism, of the hierarchy that puts one group above others. And from a spiritual perspective, if we truly believe there is no hierarchy in God, that spirit, the creator of life itself, created all of us in unique and different ways, and that there are groups that live in different parts of the globe that have different cultures and norms, then I have to believe that's a divine idea and that it's not a mistake. So our work is not really just dismantling racism. Our work is revealing the truth and embodying the spiritual principles of harmony and unity and wholeness and love. And if we're going to do that, then we have to learn more about each other and really accept and engage with each other as spiritual beings in this human experience. So I will stop there because
Oh, I could listen to that some more because you're saying all of the things that I love to hear. And one of them is oneness, is that race is the, what we have to do about racism is not just make that go away, is we have to replace it with oneness. Because racism is an artificial separation that people created that makes us think that we're more different than we are alike, but we're not. I smiled when you said you were a person of African descent, because my understanding from what studying I have done in anthropology and stuff is that we are all of us of African descent.
yes,
Nobody on this planet is not of African descent.
yes.
So I always, when they say stand up if you're of African descent, I'm up, because somewhere it's there. I don't know how far back it went, but it's there. And that's what we need to remember, is that it's that golden truth thing, that golden thread that Ernest Holmes said.
You are far ahead of many people, because that is a hard one for a lot of people. The idea that science has proven that the first human life was on the continent of Africa, and that all humanity is developed from that. But that is for many people, it's an intellectual, I've heard or read that fact, but it really doesn't apply to me, is how a lot of people think about it.
See, that's one of the benefits of having spent most of my life thinking my entire value was between my ears, is that once something gets between my ears, it's real. And I can feel the truth of it, and if you look at the globe, and this is just a slight sidetrack, if you look at the globe, you can see how at one point there was really only one continent. There was a whole lot of water, and there was one continent. And things happened in the evolution of the planet, and that continent broke apart. But that continent, the biggest part of that continent, was Africa. And that's where life came from. And then it spread out, and then the continents split apart, and the environment changed, and things happened. And I think that's exciting and marvelous. And, I would love to have a puzzle that started out with the just the one continent and all the water, and then you got to see the pieces come apart that would make a great Disney movie.
It would make a good, you said puzzle, and I was thinking as you were talking, to see it with the technology we have today, where literally you could have the movement and see how things change. That would be fascinating to watch. We started with Mind to Do and that Facebook group, and it is interesting to have over 7,000 people participating in that group, and it does ebb and flow. So when there are a lot of things in the news that are related to racism, especially Black-white racism, there's a lot of activity in the group. And then, like in recent months, there's been less that's been on the national or international level. And so the participation kind of goes down. I get a chance to focus more on awareness and education instead of action and response to issues and concerns. But all of that came from, or not didn't come from, but developed parallel to the work that I was already doing in spiritual communities to raise the awareness. And so in the book that I wrote titled Stained Glass Spirit, the focus was, and I'm going to go back and talk about the name Stained Glass Spirit in a minute, but the focus was in the first part of the book that diversity is his divine idea. And then I ended up writing this chapter as I was fleshing out, how do I make this make sense to people? It's like there's the biology of differences from a racial perspective. There's the sociology, like the construct and the story we make up about what the differences mean. And then there's the spirituality. And as spiritually grounded people, we need to really understand all three, because it doesn't work to say racism doesn't exist. It's not real because there is no racism in the creator or in spirit. No, racism is real because we have created it. It wasn't created by spirit, but as in our humanity, we have created this systemic hierarchy and valuing or not valuing of people based on racial characteristics. Howard Thurman says it's not that it is not authentic that these kinds of things happen. It's not that it's not authentic. It's what's true is it's not absolute.
There you go.
So it's authentic especially from the perspective of sociology or how society works or has worked, but it's not absolute. It is not the spiritual truth of what must be. And so when you understand that the biology, that we are different based on physical characteristics, we're different based on cultural norms, the society piece, the culture piece. But you have to also know the spiritual truth. And how do you navigate that? The same way you navigate what seems like a paradox in anything else, that humanity is doing this and spirituality teaches us this, and we are doing and being in both environments at the same time.
I love what you said about diversity being a divine idea, because my description, my creation story is, when I encounter someone who doesn't follow the same kind of new thought path that I do, that God created everything that exists. Yes. And before God did that, nothing existed except God, right? Right. Okay, so then the only thing God had to work with to create all of us was God. So that means every one of us is a little drop of God with skin on the outside, and God got bored. And so all of us got different kinds of skin and different kinds of hair and different places to live. And some of them go, oh, cool. And some of them run screaming into the night, but I can't help it. That's what works for me. That's how I see the picture.
That is a great way, because it's so simple. And simple is so important for basic understanding. We can sometimes make things so complicated, and we don't have to.
Nope, we don't. Well, we are getting into time, so I'm going to ask you my 4 questions, 4 of the 5 questions I usually ask everybody, because I already asked you one and you said, yes, she's coming back. She's coming back. July of next year, she's coming back. Okay, so the first question is there anything you want to talk about that I haven't asked you about?
That is a big question, because there's so many possible things to talk about, especially in the context of the global focus today and the future of spiritual living. So yes, there's one thing I want to talk about. Having said that out loud, And that is in linking what we've already talked about to that. If there is anybody who is watching or listening to this, who in the first, the time that we've already spent together was thinking, oh, they're talking about racism and it doesn't have anything to do with me. Oh, they're talking about diversity. Well, I'm cool with diversity. I like all the different people, but you really only interact with people who are similar to you. I just want to reinforce that this is meaning inclusion is something that it's not a game and it's not a headline, right? It's a game changer, and it is the world we live in. We live in a multicultural, multi-generational, multi-ethnic world where there are many languages spoken and there are many cultural norms to navigate. And all of us can contribute if we truly want to create a world where spiritual living is showing up as the norm. Then all of us must discipline ourselves to meet and learn about and understand people who are different from us, because we're the ones who will benefit. We'll learn things we didn't even know there were to learn. We'll learn about new foods, new ways to do things, and that doesn't take anything away from us. So you didn't ask me to like give a talk about something, but that's the thing. I don't want us to leave that topic without reinforcing this is global in nature, but we have to live it individually.
That is the single most perfect segue to the second question I've ever had. Because the second question is, how does what you do and how you do it encourage, enhance, develop, embrace, pick your own verb, conscious evolution?
Ooh, I love that. I love that. So when I received the Ernest Holmes Award from Centers for Spiritual Living, I had to think about, like, what would my acceptance speech be about? And how do you make a really valid and important and impactful point in whatever ridiculous amount of time, like 2 minutes? It might have been 3 minutes that they give you to have impact. And one of the key points that I made, that I talked about before then and talk about now still, you don't have to be a minister to have a ministry.
That's right.
You do not have to have the title of minister to have a ministry. And while I have a title of licensed practitioner, and while I have a title now of, recipient of an honorary doctorate degree, titles don't make up the ministry. And so I believe that I have come to believe that my primary purpose in this incarnation is to model being a conscious bridge between people of different cultures and to teach other people how to do that. And whether I'm working in a corporate environment, I'm working with a church or a spiritual community, or whether I'm working one-on-one as a coach with people, or whether I am simply blogging or putting posts on my website for whomever sees it, I believe that is contributing to the conscious evolution of moving from the society we have had in the 20th and early 21st century, a conscious evolution to experiencing heaven on earth.
Oh, you did it again, because here's the third question. It sounds like the same one, but it's not. How does what you do encourage, enhance, embrace, expose world peace?
Yeah. And for the record, I do want to say out loud and to the camera, Reverend Dr. Sharri did not tell me what these questions were in advance.
I don't.
So the fact that they are weaving together in this musical, magical, mystical way is all God. So this supporting peace and moving toward peace, I have a I have a belief that peace is not necessarily everybody loving each other and being nice and smiling and being sweet and avoiding the hard topics. Um, it irritates me. It irritates me. I get quite worked up when I am around spiritual people, people who label themselves as spiritual, but they won't talk about the hard stuff. And their excuse is, well, I just want to be nice, or I want to keep the peace. No, no, you're delusional and you are not creating a long lasting, long standing, deep or deeply seated peace or love when you ignore what's really happening. I read a quote, and I'm going to have to look this up again so I can remember the name of the person who wrote it. But basically, the quote was, okay. Now I forgot the quote too because I was trying to think of the name. Oh, it was a quote that basically said, if you're going to be an effective minister, then you should have the Bible or whatever your holy book or your spiritual guidebook is in one hand and the newspaper in the other. Because the news in the world, the trials and tribulations of the world, are what we should be praying for or what we should be bringing healing to. And in that way, we operate and create and birth a long lasting and real peace. So the work that I do gives people the tools, the understanding first, right? In all things, seek understanding, but the understanding and then the tools to be able to do something that ensures the qualities of God are revealed in our daily experience of humanity.
Well, I'll take a large order of that. Thank you very much. Here's the last question, and this is the one that's the most fun. You might want to close your eyes. Supposing that every single aspect of your life, every detail, every experience, every person, every event goes exactly the way you would like it to go, what does Tracy Brown RScP look like 10 years from now?
I love a good visioning type question because I don't want to be pushed by pain. I want to be pulled by a vision. So I love this question because it gives me the opportunity to take a breath. So 10 years from now, if I'm still in this physical body, I want to be doing really a lot of what I'm doing more, but not but, and reaching more people. I envision that looking like speaking a lot, like speaking several times a month around the world about how we live in this world together and what our spiritual beliefs teach us that mandate us to do things differently than past generations did them. And so writing books, 10 years from now, I would love, as I imagine in a Mary Morrissey kind of way. I'm so happy and grateful that in the last 10 years, I've published 10 books that have sold, millions of copies, and people are using the principles in those books. So that, a book every year, and then speaking around the world around that. Now, I want to add one thing, because I believe in the eternal nature of life. So even as I took that breath in and thought, to answer the question, what would Tracy Brown's life be like 10 years from now? I actually was seeing whether I am in this physical form or not, that is the impact that the life of Tracy Brown is having. And part of the reason I think that is true for me is because I've been reading a lot from Sarah Flowers lately. And Sarah Flowers, for people who don't know her name, Black woman in Los Angeles who in 1937 graduated from the professional training at the Institute of Religious Science. And we don't hear about Black people in the history of New Thought a lot unless we do some research. And I found Sarah Flowers, and from 1937 to 1947, she wrote several books. And she had a weekly radio show, just like Ernest Holmes did. And she taught a lot of people, and she was a full-time practitioner. That was her full-time income generating source. And so when I think about, she wrote Atomic Metaphysics, the electrical principle of man in 1947. And I'm reading it now, 80 years later, and being impacted and inspired by it.
Yeah.
When I think of my life 10 years from now, whether I am in this physical form and able to jump here and do a program or not, that's what I want my life to be about.
Works for me. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Please hang around, folks, because she's following up with something even more powerful than this. And next week, come back because we have Reverend Renee Laboa for our guest next week. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.